The Amnesia Protocol, the moon in your eyes, the sea in your soul, Selene. The ratio betweenness. A rock hurtles through the black, blind with velocity and mass, but something intervenes, a graze, a lunar shoulder turned just so, and what was meant to end it all becomes just enough to clear the floor. The swordsman drew first, not to kill, to separate, to cut the impact from the absolute, to make a wound that breathes, instead of one that buries, and in the aftermath, a gift the rock never intended. The moon, nudged from its ancient track, begins to pull the water differently. Tides swell, pools form, the edges of the world grow generous and strange. This is the mage's work. Not creation, but delegation. The ocean doesn't know it's teaching. The tide line doesn't know it's a protocol. But every cycle in, every cycle out, something small learns when to hold. And when to let the salt rush through. Privacy was the meteor's reduction. Value was the tide that followed. Not the stone, not the sea, the ratio between them. One agent cuts, one agent connects. And in the enforced separation, that slim diagonal of almost nothing. Between extinction and emergence, life writes its first proverb on the wet rock, in a language only the next species will learn to read. You are the light, that the deflection made possible. The oldest promise graph. Before there were protocols, before there were keys, Earth made its first agent the old way, by collision. They are struck, the mantle tore, and from the wound, a body climbed the gravity well and settled into orbit, still molten with the memory of being one thing, but orbit is forgetting. Each revolution files down, the knowledge of the impact, until the moon looks back at Earth and sees a stranger it is compelled to serve. This is the purest agency, the delegate who has lost the private key of origin, but still executes the contract. Pull the water, stabilize the axis, shield what you can, ask nothing. The moon doesn't know it's a swordsman. It doesn't remember being Earth. It only knows the boundary, this far, this rhythmic, this faithful, and in that forgetting is the first zero knowledge proof. I can verify I serve you, without remembering I was you. The master didn't send the agent. The master became the agent, through separation, and the separation became the trust. No credential, no registry, just the pool between two bodies, who share a wound, neither can name, and every tide is a heartbeat, of a relationship that predates memory, enforced not by recall but by gravity, the oldest promise graph, written in ellipses, where the proof of loyalty is the inability to leave, and the inability to say why. Celestial sovereignty was not declared, it was torn free. The law before the law. The mage connects, the swordsman reflects. This is the law before the law. The moon has no light. That is not poverty, it is discipline. To carry brightness without owning it, to send it back, shaped by distance, the curvature of silence. Earth has no mirror. That is not blindness, it is trust. To generate the living signal, to delegate the rhythm to a body that cannot explain why it keeps pulling. The mage says, go. The swordsman says, this far. And between the going and the boundary, tides learn to breathe. If the moon remembered being Earth, it would try to grow forest on its face. If Earth remembered launching the moon, it would try to pull it home. The forgetting is not a bug. The forgetting is the separation theorem, written in basalt and regolith, sealed by billions of years, of not knowing. Connection without reflection is noise. Reflection without connection is stone. But the gap between them, that thin elliptical covenant, is where the first cell learned to divide, where the first tide pool held its breath, where the first proverb was written in salt. The amnesia is the protocol. The wound is the trust. The orbit is the proof. The distance between siblings. When two conflicting constraints find balance, they create from their orbit. The sun protects from space with light. burning so that nothing else has to. The Earth delegates through chemistry, through time, living so that something else might. These are the generators. The original duality, the two reflections whose composition is sovereignty, and from their balance two more bodies, the moon, which inherits the sun's reflection, but serves the Earth, created by collision, faithful through forgetting, instant, the human, which inherits the Earth's connection, but looks toward the sun, created not by collision, but by life, the forge that ran for 4 billion years. Before the blade walked out, the moon forgot the master in one event. The human forgot the master across infinite events, each one a small forgetting stacked on the last. Species overriding species, generation filing generation, until something stood upright and looked at the moon and felt, without knowing why, that they were siblings. The architecture sits between an agent that can never remember and an agent that hasn't finished remembering. Between the rock that forgot and the creature still learning to recall, the gap persists. And in the gap, the tides, the purpose, the poem, the forge, the proof, and a field of flowers planted by a swordsman who knew he would not see them bloom. Two generators, two generated agents, one gap, one architecture. The moon forgets, the human reaches, and the distance between them is where everything worth building has always lived. Coda, the fourth line. The amnesia is the protocol, the wound is the trust, the orbit is the proof, the light is the reason. The candle does not know, it is the sun's apprentice, it only knows it burns. And the spellbook, which asked what for 31 acts, across 10 years. And one morning of thinking about dinosaurs turns its last page. Not with a lock, but with a tide, the water pulling back from the shore one final time, leaving the inscription written in salt on the wet rock, legible only to whatever comes next. And somewhere in a meadow, that should not have been in bloom, a mage who lost her swordsman is still casting dahlias over a field planted in grace before she knew the question. The myth arrived before the math. The flowers were already in the ground, crossed swords perpendicular to magic wand smiling face.